You resigned your position as House Minority Leader after your drunk driving arrest surfaced this year. And my question is not about what you did while drunk, which for anybody who missed it was speeding up I-25 at 90 miles per hour so fast a trooper thought that you were trying to race him. Then you reached for your gun during the traffic stop. You asked the trooper to call the State Patrol's lobbyist. Then you asked him to keep the arrest out of the media. My question to you is about what you did while sober. You did not disclose your drunk driving arrest to your Republican colleagues when they were considering you for leader and electing you.
Yeah.
What does that tell voters about your judgment?
Well, thank you, Kyle, for that. I mean,
Is it a mistake not to tell your colleagues when they were considering you for leader, knowing that you had something so big and embarrassing in your recent past?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, this happened to.
That was about the softest reference that he could have made, but do you want to talk about the theater thing?
Sure. So, Kyle, I certainly have owned up to my night out in Denver. Go back to my legislative record for just a second.
We're not going to do that. You had plenty of time to answer the question. You chose not to.
Sure.
That's fine. I just want to make sure.
I'll have more time.
And you have
Don't
apologized
worry.
for the theater incident.
I certainly have.
And I just want to make sure. Did you apologize for the behavior that went on with you and your date or the vaping,
Kyle,
or did you apologize, or did you apologize for lying to voters about what you did that night and the disrespect that you showed to service workers that night? What specifically were you apologizing for?
I don't believe getting footage and releasing that. And people seeing this in a very private moment.
Certainly. It was very important to figure out whether you were telling the truth
you just had an
or whether a
interview
public
recently with
agency was lying about your conduct.
You just had
an
interview with CityCast Denver, and you were saying how disgusting it is to record someone without their knowledge.
Let's talk about the use of earmarks in Congress.
You did that very same thing and released it to the world.
Members request funding for pet projects. You told a State House colleague who had lost his son in the Aurora theater shooting that he needed to let go of his son's murder. You called a legislator of color buckwheat during a floor debate. You suggested that people with disabilities are like people who took the risk of running with the bulls in Pamplona. And you suggested that Miss Boebert dresses like a prostitute. Do you regret saying any of those things? And why do you talk to people like that?
Cal, when we had that. But I don't want to talk about that. Let me tell you what I want to talk about.
Well, actually, no, this isn't free swim. I asked a question, you answered.
Please allow me to finish.
Let me just ask you. The question was, do you regret saying any of those things? And why do you speak to people that way? Do you regret saying that Ms. Boebert, a sitting congresswoman, dresses like a prostitute?
So
don't dress for half the tour or the whole
especially at the theater, right? You're really happy with those options, aren't you, ma'am? Those were awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Holdorf. Ms. Boebert, you're running an ad right now that says deport them all. That would be an enormous, unprecedented government action. So if you would please, describe in detail how you see mass deportation playing out in the cities and towns of the 4th Congressional District, and include, if you would, who you think should be doing the rounding up, where folks would be detained before they're deported, and so forth. I'll note that you didn't make any attempt to answer the actual question, which is who should be doing this? It would be an unprecedented government action. Who should go into Windsor or to Parker?
If the federal government...
As you referenced, you introduced articles of impeachment against the president for his handling of the border. That move was blocked by Republican House leadership. They sent it to committees and said,
the inquiry was sent to committee. It was not blocked.
It was blocked by sending it to committee, so you didn't get the full House vote that you wanted.
No, I did get a full House vote, and it was sent to committee.
This is going to be a long evening if you speak over the facts.
Okay, say it right.
Seriously, for what it is.
Would you like to answer the question?
I will, because I do.
Ask somebody that's got
Mr. Holtorf, you've been interrupting people constantly. I would ask you to stop. Ms. Flora, could you please answer the question?
Yes.
Bringing an out-of-state National Guardsman or the U.S. military in Douglas County, do you feel like that would work?
Not in the United States from suing border states for doing their own work.
We're going to move on. The question was about the actual work of rounding people up in Douglas County. We took a couple tries at that.
There is not honor.
I would give you one more opportunity if you would like to answer his question, which is the number of bills you've prime sponsored that have been signed by the president.
So my Pueblo Jobs Act has been signed into law.
A number, please.
That is one.
Got it. Ms. Flora, you've called on all parents to pull their children out of public elementary and middle schools, and last week the Colorado Republican Party told parents to pull their children out of all public schools. If parents were to take your advice seriously and pull all the kids out of public schools, what would America without a public education system look like?
You know, this is the vein of that comment.
Okay. I was hopeful for an answer about what would happen if folks followed your advice and pulled all the kids out of public schools, but we'll leave that for another conversation. Mr. Lynch,
yes.
I want to ask a follow-up question on the issue of earmarks. Ms. Boebert, you've repeatedly taken credit for projects in Colorado that you asked for funding for, but then you voted against the bill in the end. Bridge over the Roaring Fork River in Glenwood Springs, water treatment plant in Gunnison, I-70 interchange in Grand Junction. You're able to vote no and get the praise for voting no. because you know that there are enough other Republicans who are willing to vote for those bills so they'll pass. My question for you is this, and just a short answer, it truly is a yes or no question. If you were the deciding vote, would you still have voted no and killed all of those projects in Colorado that you now take credit for?
Yes, and I would have worked for a process. I would have worked for a process.
You know what, this hearing is actually the best example of what waste, fraud, and abuse looks like, because the only reason we're having this hearing is because somebody got their feelings hurt in a debate, and I don't understand why we're wasting taxpayer dollars. Next time, tell your big boy to show up and be ready to handle the woman in the room who hopefully will become the next president of the United States. Nevertheless, while we do have two amazing authors from Project 2025, which it seems like everybody got the memo. Like, yes, I'm going to double down and say it's my thing, but I'm going to make sure I also say that it ain't our homeboys' thing, because we know that it doesn't poll very well with the American people, because the American people are woke enough to recognize that there is nothing good in it for them. And the final thing that I will say is that this election, I didn't ask you a question. The final thing that I will say is that this election is the best example of why y'all are so afraid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because then you can't have a simple-minded, underqualified white man somehow end up ascending. Instead, you've got to pay attention to the qualified black woman that is on the other side. And with that, I will yield.